Welcome to History with Kids. Today, we're diving into the Alexiad, a story written by a Byzantine princess about her father's reign. Quotes are adapted from the translation by E.R.A. Suter. We should alert you, this episode includes warfare, psychological manipulation, and attempted assassination. We're not trying to scare anyone, but this may not be for sensitive listeners. Now, kids, what do you know about the Byzantines?
It was once an empire.
Yep, that's implied by my comments earlier, but that's true.
I'm pretty sure that fought a lot of wars.
It fought a lot of wars. Who were the Byzantines?
The Byzantines.
The Byzantines were the Byzantines?
Yeah. Oh, wait, no, I know who they were. People.
What if I told you that the Byzantines called themselves Romans? After Rome itself had fallen, the Romans in the east, based out of the city of Constantinople, continued onwards. Alexios Kominos was born almost 1,000 years ago, not long after Beowulf was written down. The Roman Empire, based in Constantinople, still controlled most of the modern-day areas of Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, Albania, and Cyprus, as well as parts of Turkey and even a bit of Russia. These Eastern Romans were a big deal. They had the biggest building in the world, the Hagia Sophia, and they still used a version of Roman law. Did you know any of that about the Byzantines?
No. No.
Our author today is a woman named Anna Komnenia. She was raised as a princess because her father, after all, was the emperor. And as a kid, she was taught literature and history, philosophy, theology, mathematics, and medicine. Whew. What do you think of being a student if you're a Byzantine princess?
Horrible.
Now, here's how the book opens. The Emperor Alexius, my father, even before he seized the throne, had been of great service to the Roman Empire. What do you notice, kids, about that opening?
It's a good opening. I noticed that it tells you Alexios Kominos didn't just randomly become the emperor. He was already, before he was emperor, a very powerful person.
But remember, Alexios' daughter, Anna, is the person writing this history.
Oh.
So do you think she's writing a history that's like, yeah, my dad had some good things and some bad things? Or do you think she's writing a history that's like, my dad was awesome?
My dad was awesome.
And Noodle, if you wrote a history about me, how would you begin it?
My dad had
some good things and some bad things?
Had some.
Hey!
Had a history podcast.
Hey! That's a good point. All right, Anna continues. Guess what she says? In fact, Alexios' military career began in the time of Diogenes Romanus, when he, Alexios, impressed the emperor's friends by his great courage. Now, according to Anna, who remember is a little biased here, her dad fought many enemies of the Romans as a young man and was considered, she says, at the same level as Scipio or Hannibal, these ancient, awesome generals. Do you think that's entirely true?
No.
At one point, some barbarians were attacking the Romans and also attacking some Turks near the Romans. Alexios said this to the Turkish commander in the area.
Who wins?
Well, we're going to find out. But here's what Alexios said. Your sultan and my emperor are friends. This barbarian prepares to attack both of them and is indeed a fearful enemy of both. His incursions against the emperor are continually whittling away some part of the Roman domain bit by bit. For the moment, he's pursuing me with your help. Later, when the time is right, he'll make war on you. My advice to you is this. When he returns to you, seize him, for which we will pay you well, and send him to us in chains. You will profit from this in 3 ways. First, you will have more money than anyone else has ever received before. Secondly, you will win the friendship of the Roman emperor, thereby quickly attaining great prosperity. And thirdly, the Sultan also will be delighted to see so formidable an enemy out of his way, an enemy who trained his men to fight both of us, Turks and Romans. So kids, what do you think of that pitch?
It's pretty good. They're going to say yes, probably. I think it's very convincing.
And what does this pitch reveal about young Alexios?
He is a very good leader.
Why?
He has a lot of money.
Or at least he says he does. And what's something even more basic?
He likes to make people attack for him instead of attacking himself.
Yes, that is a good insight, and you're going to see more of that down the road. Now, Alexios' job is to work for the Roman emperor as a general, leading an army out in the field. At one point, there's a guy who says, no, I'm going to be the emperor, not the real emperor. And so Alexios is sent to deal with him. When Alexios gets near that army with that fake emperor, Alexios has a sense that they're going to try a night sneak attack against Alexios' army. I'm not sure how Alexios knows this. I think maybe Alexios had a spy in that other army. I'm not sure. Anyway, here is what Alexios does. The whole army was at once ordered to rest by day, to refresh themselves with sleep, and to give their horses sufficient food. They were told that when evening came, they would have to be awake and ready for a surprise attack from the enemy. At night, Alexios led his army away from his camp, fully armed. In the camp, lights were left burning everywhere. Do you understand what this means?
He's trying to make them think that he's at his camp, but actually he might be like hiding, and then when they're like in and checking, he might like just attack them.
That is exactly correct. Noodle just summarized the next thing that will happen. The fake emperor goes into the camp, as Noodle said, sees Alexios' tent blazing with light, and hurled himself into it with blood-curdling, terrible cries. But when the man he expected to see, Alexios, was nowhere to be found, and no soldier, no general at all started up from it, nobody, in fact, except a few servants who had been left behind, this fake emperor, this rebel, shouted and bawled even louder, and he said, "Where the heck is the lisper?" Lisper means someone with a lisp. That was the fake emperor's way of mocking Alexios, making fun of Alexios, because here's what Anna says. Although my father was in other respects a very good speaker, yet in the matter of the R sound only, there was a slight stammer, and his tongue would lisp, almost imperceptibly.
So that's me.
That means that Alexios was not very good at making the R sound. You know who else here doesn't always do that today?
Me.
That's right. So you're like Alexios, yep, the guy who becomes emperor.
But we are learning R's in school.
Well, I mean, you could still be an emperor someday, maybe. Anyway, as Noodle anticipated, Big Emperor is looking for Alexios in this camp. And meanwhile, Alexios' army is all ready to go right outside the camp. And they can charge and attack the enemy when the enemy are not prepared. And Alexios is able to win. So again, kids, what are we learning about Alexios from these stories? What kind of leader is he?
He guesses what the enemy will probably do, and he's very sneaky.
Now we must introduce a villain of our story, Robert Guiscard. He's a Norman. He's related to the people from the Beowulf story, some of those people who lived in France for a while. Here's how Anna describes Robert Guiscard. This Robert was a Norman by birth, of obscure origin, that means with poor parents, with an overbearing character and a thoroughly villainous mind. He was a brave fighter, very cunning in his assault on the wealth and power of great men, in achieving his aims absolutely inexorable, that means unstoppable. From head to foot, the man was graceful, with such endowments of fortune in nature and soul, he was no man's slave, owing obedience to no one in the world. Such are men of powerful character, even if they are of humbler origin. What do you understand from that?
He likes to kill people, and his family was very poor, and he likes to be the leader.
That was good stuff. Here is how Robert got his start. It says, Robert set out from Normandy with some knights. There were 5 of them and 30 foot soldiers in all. This is not a very big army. He spent his time in the mountain peaks and caves and hills of Lombardy at the head of a band of pirates. Sometimes he acquired horses, sometimes other possessions and arms. The start of his career was marked by bloodshed and many murders. So what do you think of that?
He is very brave, no matter if his enemy has more soldiers.
True. That's a good point. And Robert's power grows, and he often betrays his own allies to get more power. His army grows. He decides that he wants to become emperor of the Roman Empire.
How would he betray?
One time he told somebody that he wanted to work for them and wanted to be in a team with them and recognized that they would be his boss. They were like, great, then I'll give you some weapons and people and stuff to help me because you're going to help me now. And then when he got alone with that guy, he killed him. He surprise killed him.
Like how?
He got the guy to trust him enough to be alone with him, and then he killed him and took over his city. So Robert decides he wants to become emperor of the Roman Empire based in Constantinople, the Eastern Romans, what we now call the Byzantines.
What if they say no?
Well, Robert gathers an army. And it says that also Robert's very sneaky. So he sends some presents and letters promising friendship to the commander of the armies of the West. That is to say, my father, Alexios. So in other words, Robert, who's a very sneaky guy, just like Alexios is a sneaky guy, Robert is both building up an army and is sending out letters to the Roman generals saying, hey, why don't you come join my team? I'll be your friend. Do you think that works?
Yes. No.
Why yes, why no?
It's just very convincing. No, because they're both good at spying and that kind of thing. If one person were to know one trick, the other team might also know.
You both make a good point. Robert prepares to attack. And according to Anna, he has 150 ships carrying 30,000 soldiers. That's pretty good for a guy who started with 5 knights and 30-foot soldiers. He's come a long way. And then something important happens back in Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantines. Alexios seizes the throne and becomes emperor. So we're going to pause our story of Robert Guiscard for a minute, flip over to how Alexios becomes emperor, even as the threatening army is building to attack. So at this time, the Roman emperor was old. He's married to the Empress Maria, and they have no kids. So what question do you think everyone in court is wondering?
Who's going to be the next emperor?
That's exactly right. Anna says that the Empress Maria secretly adopted Alexios Kominos as her son. So maybe Alexios could be the next emperor. But you have to remember that Anna has a reason for saying some of these things, right? She wants to make her own father look more legitimate as the emperor. But nonetheless, it's a very complicated situation, and probably Maria did actually adopt Alexios. But other people close to the throne think that they should be the next emperor. And in particular, Maria has a son from a previous marriage named Constantine, who Maria wants to be the next emperor. But the emperor, the actual emperor, current emperor, the old man, picks as his successor someone from outside the capital city that nobody really knows. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Bad. Bad, I would say.
Anna says, here's a quote, "It was a bad decision." So Anna agrees with you. The old man did not realize the unfairness of his plans, unaware that he was bringing evil on his own head. Here was the opportunity for which Alexios and his family had been waiting. Alexios is going to pretend that he wants to help Maria get her son to be the emperor.
But he doesn't.
Correct. Alexios actually wants to be the emperor himself. But Alexios wants Maria to think that Alexios is going to help her and be on her team. But it's a dangerous situation for everyone, because to have these conversations is against the law. You could get in deep trouble for being on a team to pick the new emperor, especially if that person is not who the current emperor wants. So how would you go about making this deal, the secret team, with the Empress Maria if you were Alexios?
You could start with a topic, and then you could mention something about that, then you could start telling that.
Yeah, kind of work around to it. Here's what they say. "In the last few days, Your Majesty, you have changed. It seems to us that you are worried by private cares, and because you have no one to whom you can confide your secret, you have lost heart." But Maria is unwilling to reveal anything, so she just sighs deeply and says, "There's no need to question me like that. Heaven knows the troubles I have had, one after another, and soon apparently there'll be more in store for me." If you're Alexios, what do you reply when Maria says that?
Hey, do you want your son to become emperor?
Well, but remember, you said something very vague to her, and she basically said, "I'm fine, go away." So what's your next move?
Do you leave?
That's right. But then the next day, they saw the empress again in passing, and they said, "You are our empress, and we, your most faithful servants, prepared to suffer anything whatever on your majesty's behalf." Is this another example, kids, of Alexios being sneaky?
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. Anna says they were quick-witted, it means they were smart, and shrewd, which means kind of sneaky. She also says this about Alexios, and this is an important thing to bear in mind. She says that Alexios was skilled in divining from brief remarks the hidden thoughts that lie deep in the hearts of men. Can I explain what that means?
I guess.
Please.
Does it mean that Alexios was very good about seeing what people were actually thinking, not what they were saying.
That's right. Yes, based on even very short comments that they might make. And that's a very important skill, especially in this time when everyone is being so sneaky all the time. So to recap, the emperor is very old. The emperor picked an outsider to be the next emperor. The empress, Maria, wants her son Constantine to take over. Alexios and his family are on the empress's team, at least for now, or pretending to be. And Alexios controls much of the army. As Alexios is gathering the army near the capital city, he and his brother learn of a plot to kill them that some of the people at court are organizing. And Anna says, some say that the empress too, Empress Maria, was not altogether ignorant of the plot. In other words, Anna's saying that according to some people, maybe Empress Maria was part of this plan to kill Alexios. What does that mean? Why would the empress be okay with a plot to kill Alexios, who might be her own adopted son?
Could it be because she's wants to become the next emperor?
Maybe. After talking with his brother and also with his mom, who is very wise, Alexios makes a decision. Now is the time to make his move. Alexios goes to one of his key generals, whose help he would need if he was going to try to take over the government. And Alexios explains that he's thinking of attacking the emperor and becoming emperor himself. Here's what his key general says in reply. If you leave here at daybreak tomorrow, I will follow you, and I will personally fight as a volunteer on your side. But if you defer your plan to the next day, that means if you wait, I must warn you that I shall go to the emperor without delay and denounce both you and your men without hesitation. In other words, if you leave now and get your plan moving right away, I'm on your team. If you're just asking me, but you're not going to act, I'm going to tell the emperor what you're doing. Why would somebody say that?
I think it's that he wants to be on whichever team would get him the most power.
But what does it also say about the odds of success? Now that Alexios is telling people his plan, if Alexios starts right away versus waits and isn't sure what to do.
Just go now before anyone tells.
Correct. That's the key thing. Because now that Alexios is telling people, there's a risk that the emperor learns about it. So Alexios has to strike right away before the emperor finds out. And Alexios is going to leave the city at daybreak to meet up with his army and bring his family with him. But how could a big group leave the city without being noticed and reported to the emperor? So Alexios' mom has a good idea. For the family to go visit a church that's outside of the city walls and then to escape the city. But the mom is discovered. She's noticed at leaving. And so the emperor summons them. And here's what Alexios' mom tells the emperor. When their enemies planned to gouge out their eyes and make them blind, my sons Alexios and Isaac, who discovered the plot, found the danger intolerable and unfair and left the city, not as rebels, but as faithful servants with three objects in view: to escape imminent peril, to convince your majesty of the conspiracy against them, and to implore your majesty's protection. Is that true?
No.
So what is Alexios' mom doing?
Wait, her mom was trying to fake that they're being good, but actually they're being bad.
That's right. So maybe Alexios learned to be so sneaky from his mom, because she's pretty sneaky too. But she has to go live in a nunnery in the city as a prisoner until this is over. She's waiting for news about her sons, who, remember, escaped the city and are trying to meet up with their army. Now, meanwhile, Alexios and his brother managed to get to the imperial stables where the imperial horses are stored. And here's what Alexios did. Some of the horses they left there after first cutting off their hind feet with their swords. All those which seemed more useful they took. So in other words, Alexios hurt a bunch of the horses and took the others. Why would he do that?
Because if someone found out, they could get the horses and chase them.
Correct, to make it harder for them to be followed. Now, Alexios escapes the city riding on a fast horse and goes to the second most important person in the empire, a guy named John Ducas.
Wait, do we have to remember?
No, you don't have to remember all the names. And Alexios sends a letter into the house where John is staying. And the letter says this: we have prepared a very fine dish, not without rich, savory sauce. If you would like to share the feast, come as soon as you can to sit with us at the perfect banquet. What does that letter mean?
I don't know. It means that Alexios made a banquet. I'm guessing the food or something's poisoned.
So there's no actual food. It's a secret message. It's a message that is meant to make John understand something. Remember, what is Alexios doing right now?
Trying to take over the, what's his name?
The empire, yes. Yeah. And Alexios wants help from John Dukas. So what is this message about food and how rich it is and how nice it is and how John is welcome to be part of it?
That he is welcome to be part of the army?
Yes, the rebellion, exactly. Alexios also finds some tax collectors on the road, bringing taxes back to the capital city. Alexios takes the money and uses it to hire some Turkish mercenaries they run into to help fight for them. And then Alexios and his group reach the main army. Here's the message that Alexios' allies, like John Dukas, spread to the soldiers. Alexios will reward you, they declared, with most magnificent gifts and honors, each according to his deserts. Alexios has been your army commander for a long time. He has shared salt with you, fought bravely at your side in ambush and set battle, sparing neither his body nor his limbs, nor even life itself for your safety's sake, again and again crossing with you over mountain and plain, knowing the miseries of war and understanding you well, both as individuals and as an army. He is a real soldier with a deep affection for the fighting man. If you were a soldier in this army, what would you think of that pitch?
That Alexios Kominos is a good guy. I think that he actually won't do any of those stuff.
Well, but if you were not as sneaky as you are, if you were just hearing this and it was like, hey, will you help him fight to be emperor? What would you think?
No. But remember the part when he said that he will risk his body parts for your safety? What if he doesn't?
If you were on Alexios' team when he sneak attacked that rebel, remember with that whole thing with the empty camp? Remember that? Where he made it look like his camp had soldiers in it and the enemy went in, and then Alexios and his army attacked from the outside.
Yeah.
So if you were one of those soldiers and you were hearing this pitch, would you think that Alexios is a good guy to be emperor?
Yes.
And do you think he'd be a good emperor?
Yes. A very good emperor.
Alexios and his army marched to Constantinople, where the elderly emperor still is living. Alexios does not want a big deadly fight, so his soldiers go close to the walls of Constantinople and talk to the different commanders in the towers to see if any of them will switch teams. One of the sections of the walls of Constantinople, the soldiers there agree to Alexios' deal. And Alexios' army can enter through an open gate in the walls and surprise enter the city. And so the old emperor has to step down and stop being emperor. And Alexios very quickly becomes emperor. So we'll stop here for today with Alexios as the emperor of the Romans in the capital city of Constantinople, and Robert Guiscard and his invasion army of 30,000 soldiers getting ready to attack. What did you learn today?
I learned that Alexios is very good at tactics. Alexios is very wise, and his mom is too.
That's true. Would you have wanted to be part of living this story if you were alive at that time?
No, thank you.
Why?
Because it was a very violent time. Most of the heads went like this.
Thank you for that. Compared to the other stories we've read, was it more or less violent, more or less sneaky, more or less other things?
More sneaky. More sneaky, I suppose. Less violent, actually. Okay, no, actually the same amount of violence.
It was pretty violent. Well, we will find out next episode what happens with Robert Guiscard's invasion army and Alexios as the new emperor, written in the words of his own daughter, Anna. Thanks, and looking forward.
Goodbye.